Another unexpected find, and another spot worth marking on the charts. 2 great waves in 2 days, and Martin still wanted to keep looking for more. We steamed all night and arrived the next morning at this beautiful A-frame beach break. Even though there was no one else out, this is actually a well-known surf spot in this area. But we had no idea it got this good.
I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. I haven't talked to anyone that surfed here or been here or seen really any photos, so I just kind of had an open mind about the whole thing.
After only a few days of searching, the Quicksilver Crossing had discovered 2 great waves and surfed a third with real potential. All this in an area that we had been assured had little to offer. And all the maps and satellite imagery we could find would have agreed. But that's what exploration is all about. Getting out there and seeing what you can find for yourself. After the break, local Jimmy Rotherham shows us some Central American gold. In Central America, it's not just the surf that's worth exploring. The jungles and volcanic mountain ranges were also amazing. This is the Santiago crater, still pumping out poisonous gases hundreds of years after it first blew its top. To give you some idea just how big this crater is, see those white dots on the right? They're tourist buses. These volcanoes are everywhere. On most days we surfed, we could see at least 3 or 4 volcanic peaks on the horizon, some still smoldering in the distance. The other amazing thing is the steaming hot weather that causes the inevitable afternoon lightning storm.
Once nightfall comes here and the moisture just pours up off the land and you know that humidity just gets broken up. Some of the most violent lightning storms I've ever seen.
Cameraman Chris Bryan was actually struck by lightning while filming in broad daylight. This nightly rain washes thousands of tons of volcanic soil into the Pacific every day. So even though it's clean, the water on the Pacific side is brown, while the water on the Caribbean side is crystal blue. Someone who's grown up surfing the brown offshore waves is Jimmy Rotherham. Jimmy met up with the Quicksilver Crossing while Tom Carroll was on board. Jimmy assured us that Central America had incredible waves, and he was keen to show us around. This is Jimmy's home break, right in front of his house. Jimmy can actually check the surf while he's working in the family restaurant.
Wake up early in the morning, like on a Monday or something like that, and there's no one out. Surf by yourself for like 2 hours. I'm so lucky to live here, to was born here and surf it all my life.
It has to be one of the best right-hand point breaks in the world, and most surfers have never even heard of it. When it gets bigger, it breaks exactly the same as when it's small, but it runs for about 300 meters.
It's fast, hollow, a couple good sections, hit the lip a couple times, just smack it. And sometimes it connects, creates like a 400-yard wave, just go forever. Right when you get by the cemetery, your legs are just starting to cramp down, you can't move anymore.
Here's another amazing wave that Jimmy showed us. It can only be accessed by boat because there are no roads, just wild horses on the beach.
was really good to catch up with the local surfer here, Jimmy Rotherham. By the time we got out in the water and got to see him surf, gosh, the guy just shone. He was, a talent that, I don't know, where do you get that sort of stuff from? I don't know where that comes from. You're born with that stuff, and to see that level and that enthusiasm, and just stoked just to take off on a wave and do what he does. It was really good. It helped me a lot in the water, and I'm very grateful for that.
There was one spot that Jimmy wanted to keep quiet about until a decent swell arrived. He told us that this place can get as perfect as Pipeline, but with 1/10 of the crowd, and we believe it. The Quicksilver crossing scored incredible waves right through Central America, when we really expected to find very little. Based on this, the crossing would spend an extra 2 years in the waters of the Caribbean, Central America, and the USA, looking for any other stones which might be left unturned. New Zealand is not a secret. It is not the wild frontier, nor is it the final frontier. But with the eyes of the board-riding world often focused on the intensity of waves in Tahiti, Fiji, or Hawaii, New Zealand remains a place just on the edge of our consciousness. And that's the way the locals like it. Only a short plane trip from international surf centers like Torquay, Sydney, and the Gold Coast, many parts of New Zealand have remained isolated and untouched, with literally hundreds of miles of rarely ridden coastline. So we invited Australians, Matt Hoy,
It's good. It's beautiful. We're in New Zealand, mate.
Craig Wharton, and WCT giant killer Troy Brooks to pack their bags and help us find some hidden waves in the secluded corners of New Zealand's North Island. First stop was the Black Sands of Piha, where Craig was to compete in the Quicksilver Air Show. The judging criteria for air show events is based solely on aerial maneuvers, and the conditions at Piha were perfect. Quicksilver's Ry Craik from Western Australia won the event, so we thought we'd throw him in the back of the wagon as well. He told us he was stoked.
I'm just so stoked to win. It's Piha, it's sick. I'm super stoked.
And New Zealand's highest-ranked professional surfer, Maz Quinn, agreed to come along, just to make sure we didn't get lost.
Come on!
Matt told everyone to hurry up.
You have to do everything around here?
Only a few hundred miles from East Coast to West Coast, the best way to get around New Zealand is by car. Sitting in between the Pacific and the Great Southern Oceans, New Zealand gets absolutely hammered by swell and wind. Exploring the coast by boat would be a recipe for disaster, and the coast is littered with shipwrecks. With Maz's guidance and a clean little swell running, the boys found a nice spot to get wet. It wasn't great, but everyone was glad to get some waves to themselves.
Known Troy for a little while now, and he surfs so good. Just like whenever I go surf with him, it just pushes my surfing so much more. And then Hoya, just I look up to him so much because of what he's done and still rips and just have so much fun. And then water, I've travelled with water so much lately and he's been real good to me and he just does huge airs.
The countryside and wildlife are really spectacular in New Zealand.
This is my third time in New Zealand. I reckon it's such a nice place. Good waves and stuff and heaps of scenery to look at. It's great.
The next morning, Maz decided to head further north. No one was sure what they'd find, but there was still plenty of swell around, so they were pretty sure they'd find something.
Hey, good call. I'll tell you which way we're going. That way. Maybe that way? And oh, no, this spot. That way it is.
After scanning what seemed like a few good spots and coming back disappointed more than once, Troy decided he had his own ideas.
We're going everywhere, but nowhere fast.
After nearly a full day driving around the craggy coastline and finding nothing worth surfing, it seemed that this trip was doomed to miss the swell and watch as the waves disappear. This called for some quick thinking, and Maz, using his local knowledge, consulted with some strange locals.
Tuna.
After the break, we'll find out if all the hard work is paid off in New Zealand. The following morning, the boys resumed their mission and decided to try some places even further north. After 3 days of messing around with road maps and getting lost, a lot. Thanks, Maz. We were coming to the end of New Zealand's North Island. It wasn't looking promising, but just as hope was fading, the boys rounded a bend, looked into a bay, and saw this. Perfect surf peeling into a secluded little inlet. The bay wasn't catching as much swell as the more open beaches, but clean swell lines were breaking on a rocky point and running down a sandbar. The sandbar wasn't even, so the wave had shifting sections that made every wave different.
The location is unbelievable. As you come down the hill, it's like you're going back in time.
The waves here are incredible. We've had this one left here that's just a world-class wave, and I've never even heard of it before and never seen any footage of it or anything like that, and it's incredible.
It's probably one of the best lefts I've ever surfed. Fun-wise, doesn't get any funner waves ever, anywhere. Amazing.
Things were looking up. Being a sand-bottom wave without any rocks to hit, the boys could hit it as hard as they liked. It's the sort of wave that any surfer could ride and have the time of their lives, just rolling your board from rail to rail with the wall rising up to meet you, or hitting the lip and getting air.
All these little sections coming out, you get a little tube coming out, doing air, and then do little rios all the way, cutbacks, another little air. It's good, it's really flying if you see someone do a big turn, then do an air, and then do another big turn. It just looks incredible.
Troy was mildly excited.
The wave in itself is pretty mellow. It's not a scary wave at all. It's really playful. It's just a constant wall. It's just constantly green in front of you. If you're a goofy foot, you can get barreled out there, but it's pretty hard on your backhand. It's a real tight little arm and barrel, but it's just the most smashable, playful wave you'll ever see.
For the entire day, Rye, Matt, Maz, and Craig took this wave apart. A few locals from town came out to have a look and ride some waves for themselves. It was a great vibe in the water. It's sometimes hard to tell whether it's adventure and fun or just a whole lot of hassle. But when you find a wave like this left-hander, you know it's more than worth it.
Yeah, if you wanted to, there's so many spots here on the east coast of New Zealand. Like if you had a bit of heart in you to go and look for it, you could find some amazing spots. It's so rugged and everywhere you look, it's just so beautiful.
Once upon a time, people actually believed that faster computers or faster access to the internet would reduce the number of hours we would spend behind computer screens and would even give us more time to do the things we really love. Ask anyone who works in an office, and that's just not the case. But surfers are a wily bunch, and by using Navy swell and wind tracking websites, they've managed to get surf forecasting down to a fine art. An extreme example of this use of technology is a small group of elite surfers who track the monster swells generated by the most violent of storms. These guys are literally prepared to jump on a plane at a moment's notice and chase these waves all around the world.
Surf forecasting is great nowadays because you know a week ahead of time what's going to happen with storm patterns. You get this purple blob, we call them the purple monsters, and that's as big as the oceans get. That's, the waves, the swells in the ocean are 50 feet or whatever, and when a 50-foot swell hits a reef, it's going to jump, quite a bit bigger than that.
Every time you want to go somewhere, it's like, look at the internet, you've got 2 or 3 days to get to this one spot you're looking at, and to time it right to the very hour of the peak of the swells, what you want to get.
What surfers like Ross are looking for are the intense low-pressure systems which spin into the seas off the Arctic and Antarctic coasts, or the hurricanes and typhoons which spin around the equator. Ross and tow surfing partner Tony Ray had enough of watching these huge swells sneak under the southern coastline of Australia, and in the icy depths of winter, chased one across the Tasman Sea to the southernmost tip of New Zealand.
We'd been sitting around waiting, and finally we saw a weather pattern that looked like it was going to be good, and we just dropped everything and came. It was a real gamble. We got there, didn't know if it was going to be good, and it was terrible, but we were a day early. The next day was absolutely pumping, and it was some of the biggest waves probably ever surfed in Australasia.
The South Island of New Zealand is the junction of 3 great bodies of water: the Tasman Sea, the Pacific Ocean, and the Great Southern Ocean. The wind you can see howling across the water has lost little of its sub-zero bite since it left the solid ice pack of the Antarctic. So the warmest wetsuits available are absolutely essential. This wave of Ross's must surely be the biggest barrel ever ridden in the Southern Hemisphere. If it's not, we'd love to see some evidence to the contrary.
It's quite difficult to get waves over 15 feet, and we possibly got a 20-foot wave there. With wave buoys and computer technology, they have, in Hawaii especially, they've got these radar-censored things that measure the waves, and then they calculate it,